Ողջունում եմ բոլորիդ։ Շատ դժվար է հիմա խոսել, որտեղ երեք տպավորություն ստեղծվեց իմ մոտ, որ թեմա չի մնացել, կարծես թե ամեն մի բանի մասին խոսել ենք, դրա համար ես որոշեցի մի քիչ ձևափոխեմ իմ ելույթը, որ փորձենք չհեռանանք երեկվա նշած կարևորագույն թեմաներից, որի շուրջ կարծես թե շատ մեծ հետաքրքրություն եղավ եւ այդ հարցերին պատասխանելը պետք է։ Անընդհատ փորձում ենք տեսնենք ինչ պիտի անենք, խոսում ենք արդարության մասին, ինչ է նշանակում արդարությունի վերջո, սոցիալական արդարություն, սոցիալական համերաշխություն, շատ կարևոր թեմա բարձրացվեց եւ ընդհանրապես ինչ է կատարվել Հայաստանում։ Այն ինչ որ մենք փորձել ենք կոչել հեղափոխություն, հեղաշրջում, ընդհանրապես ինչ է դա եղել։ Կարծում եմ այս հարցերի շուրջ ես կխոսեմ, որ հետաքրքիր լինի ու գուցե շարունակենք երեկվա թեման, էլի զրոյից չսկսեմ։ Իսկապես ինչ է կատարվել Հայաստանում։ Եթե մենք վերցնում ենք դասական ինչ-որ սխեմաներ և փորձում ենք, ասենք, կոնկրետ արևմտյան տեսությունների պրիզմայով նայել, մենք պիտի պարզ ու հստակ տեսնենք, եղել է Հայաստանում համակարգափոխություն, այսինքն ինստիտուցիոնալ փոփոխություն, թե ոչ։ Եթե եղել է, կարող ենք ասել, այո, սա ասենք հեղափոխություն է կամ գոնե հեղափոխության սկիզբ է։ Եթե չի եղել, երեք ասվել այստեղ, կարելի է բնութագրել որպես բունտ։ Հիմա որն է ճիշտը, երևի պիտի փորձենք բնութագրենք ինչ վիճակ է եղել Հայաստանում, եղել է համակարգ, թե չի եղել համակարգ, ու փոխվել է այդ համակարգը, թե չի փոխվել։ Շատ պարզ հարցադրում է, ու եթե մենք այդ հարցերին պատասխանենք, կարող ենք մեզ համար հստակ ընդգծենք ինչ է կատարվել և համապատասխան արդեն ինչ խնդիրներ գոյություն ունեն։ Երեք խոսվեց շատ ճիշտ և ես էլ կփորձեմ մի քիչ մանրամասն ցույց տամ, որ Հայաստանում շատերն էին գտնում, որ գոյություն ուներ քրեա օլիգարխիկ համակարգ։ Քրեա օլիգարխիկ համակարգը մենք կարող ենք պետական համակարգ համարենք, թե ոչ, սա է խնդիրը։ Ես շատ եմ զբաղվել, ունեմ գրքույկ անգամ, բազմաթիվ հոդվածներ, տարբեր ձևով են ուսումնասիրողները նայում դրան։ Ես գտնում եմ, որ քրեա օլիգարխիկ համակարգը դա պետական համակարգ է, պետական կարգ է։ Ինչու՞։ Տեսեք ինչ հետաքրքիր երևույթ է եղել Հայաստանում։ Հայաստանում հայտարարվել է 91 թվականին, որ նպատակ կա ստեղծել իրավական պետություն։ Պարզ ու հստակ ասվել է, հետագայում էլ դա սահմանադրության մեջ ամրագրվել է։ Եվ ընդունվել են բոլորեն ձևականորեն այն արժեքները, որոնք որ պիտի բերեին այդ պետության ստեղծմանը, այսինքն ինստիտուտները պիտի ստեղծվեին։ Կարծում եմ երկար պետք չի խոսել, այդ ինստիտուտները չեն ստեղծվել։ Հենց առաջին իսկ ընտրությունների ժամանակ ընտրական ինստիտուտը տապալվել է։ Տապալվելով կատարվել է մի պարզ բան, որը կոչում է իշխանության յուրացում կամ ուզուրպացիա։ Շատ ծանոթ բաներ։ Այդ ուզուրպացիան, ինչ-որ խմբի կողմից, պիտի բերեր անպայման մի շատ էական երևույթի, դատական համակարգի պարալիզացման, որովհետև կատարվել է պետական հանցագործություն ըստ հայտարարված սահմանադրության։ Իշխանության ուզուրպացիան դա պետական հանցագործություն է։ Եվ բնական է, որ ուզուրպատորները անմիջապես պիտի վերացնեին դատական համակարգը։ Այսինքն երկրորդ ինստիտուտն է տապալվեց սկզբանը։ Ինչ պիտի լիներ։ ուզուրպացված իշխանությունների ինչ որ որակ պետք է ստեղծվեր։ Հայաստանում մի քանի էտապ է դա եղել, քանի որ մենք պատերազմով ենք սկսել պետությունը կառուցելը, իշխանության շատ շուտ եկան կարելի է կոչվել ռազմական օլիգարխիան կամ ռազմաֆեոդալական մի խավ, պատերազմի ընթացքում ստեղծված մի խավ, ռազմական օլիգարխիա կոչեք դրանց։ 97 թվականին նրանք միջ այդ կազմակերպություն ստեղծեցին երկրապահ, հետո այդ երկրապահը կանացվեց, մի կուսակցություն յուրացրին, հանրապետական կուսակցություն, որը ուրիշ մարդկանց կողմից ստեղծված կուսակցություն, ու այդ ռազմական օլիգարխիան մտավ այդ կուսակցության մեջ, հանրապետական կուսակցություն։
In 1998, they succumbed to a certain turf war. And whatever remained in the balance, the Republican Party came to power in Armenia. Then came 1999. They continued to have internal problems. What was the most substantial transformation thereafter? This side of 1999, the criminal oligarchic system came about, which crystallized further in 2003. In 2003, the president back then was Robert Kocharyan, representing epitomizing the military oligarchy. In 2003, he attempted to get elected for the second time and didn't get through the first round. When he failed at the first round, a very interesting thing happened. He brought together all asset owners, all major moneybags, handed the country over to them and asked them to protect him in the second round. The electoral headquarters were in disarray, so all the enterprises, facilities and plants had to convene meetings, convey their people, deploy their people to the elections. Kocharyan stayed in power, and these oligarchs entered into the ballot lists of various parties. Major asset holders thus crept into the parliament. An interesting thing happened in the parliament. They proclaimed a new culture is being born. They forged a coalition. What was this coalition? This coalition was exactly that which we call now the criminal oligarchy. This was a contract of dividing political and economic sectors between themselves. The political language was well formulated in the constitution, but for the economic power and the real authority, this was enshrined in that coalition agreement. This coalition agreement created a system in Armenia which we call criminal oligarchy, not because it was unlawful or illicit or, I don't know, linked to the criminal world, but in its own essence it was contractual oligarchy. There are different iterations of oligarchy. There is the clan oligarchy, for example, but in Armenia it was somewhat specific. When authoritarianism was destroyed in 2003, nobody was thinking of having an authoritarian government. What existed before then? Levon Petrosyan, for example, the first president, he consolidated his power around the issue of Karabakh. When Robert Kocharyan came, there was still an idea, a pivotal one. He was the savior of Karabakh, quote-unquote, a war hero, you name it. So there were ideas around which these people justified and consolidated their power. But in 2003, this system broke down. It was eliminated, and the only format thereafter was this contract of major money bags, which is very similar to the classical structure of the criminal world. You divide, the overarching principle is dividing sectors between the criminals. So it was put on paper. It was contractual oligarchy, as we call it now. So what's remarkable here? What's interesting for us in all this? Why did this all happen to begin with? There must be some reason or rationale. I will emphasize the most important factor here. In Armenia, like in many other countries, the newly emerging post-Soviet countries, property, the issue of property, immediately relates to state leverage. The first accumulation of assets took place through the use of state levers. There was no other way to come into possession of major assets. That was the only alternative. So from scratch, from early on, that which they called the merger of business and authorities was built into the foundation of Armenian statehood. This is an overarching fundamental issue. So when I told you how all this then progressed into that criminal accord or contract, it all evolved around those assets, property, who, where, and what possessed. Actually, public office was also property. Everything boiled down to property. So when I speak about these sectors, this was simply, everything was an asset, a property. It didn't matter whether it's office, a mandate, a piece of land, a production facility, a building, a bank account. They were all the same. They were all assets. This is what it boiled down to, what this criminal oligarchy boiled down to. What did happen in April this year in Armenia? A very interesting synthesis took place of mind and action. This is also an interesting phenomenon. When they refer to it as popular action, it was truly and genuinely so. There was no single person. There were a multitude of people who knew how to behave in a situation like that. And there were also people who wanted to do this. For a very long time, there were consultations being held to persuade that there is a method that can be used. I'll refer to this method. The public at large, the society in Armenia, succeeded to organize, self-organize into an unarmed army. The entire nation was organized into an army without any weapons. And the criminal oligarchy, in order, with the view of carrying out an operation of dismantling the criminal oligarchy. This was an operation of an unarmed army. Whether you call it a revolution or whatever, this was a clearly planned operation by very specific people, and the nation carried it out brilliantly. I will not get into the depths of it at this point because I want to take this into a different dimension, a more practical one. But I still insist that this was just an operation, and if we try to characterize it, we have to understand whether a dismantling of an oligarchic system is a revolution or not. It's a matter of taste. I would never use a modifier. It's the essence that matters. If you want to call it revolution, well, you have to first start by saying that the state system was criminally oligarchic, and it's unambiguously so for me. Such a system cannot operate without constitutional norm. They have great love, the criminal oligarchs, towards the constitution. Every leader amends the constitution to his own needs. It's impossible to get this system built on the shadow to operate without the constitution. The constitution adds legitimacy to it. So, which is why I say it was a system of state governance built on the foundation of bad, inadequate laws. It's more state-oriented than an authoritarian system. An authoritarian system, like you can clearly see it in our neighboring Azerbaijan. A random person gets onto the scene, and there's nothing else but this person's will or opinion. That's the ultimate. Whereas oligarchy is law. No one can change anything lest you touch this contract, even if it's a shadow contract. It's no first person, no head of the state, no one can go against this law, which is why you have to treat oligarchy more seriously, like even compared to Russia, where everything still hinges on one person. There's no law at all. So this is what happened in Armenia, and quite naturally there are questions rising. What's transpiring now, and where do we get from here? Since I've been monitoring all this closely and very well, I can tell you that we're now embarking on the second stage of dismantling. So this mass peaceful operation which the people pulled through, they beheaded. They made the criminal oligarchy to succumb to the people and hand over the leverage of the head of state to the people. That's what happened. The army and the police sided with the people, and that was officially stated. The police officially made a statement that the people were right, we were protecting our citizens and nothing else. Disposing of the law enforcement and having the office of the head of state, a new stage began, the new phase of dismantling. A lot is being now discussed about General Manvel. This is absolutely not anti-corruption struggle. This is the second stage of the same operation, the forceful second stage of the operation, moving from the military feudal oligarchy initially all the way to the oligarchy system was leaning on this Yerkrapa group. The old militarized oligarchy was the substratum. So now it's the second stage of dismantling the most fundamental anchor on which the system was hinged. First they decapitated it, then they distanced the law enforcement, and now the same law enforcement is used to dismantle the rest, the basis. Now they're breaking the legs. So it's not incidental that there are some nicknames, the Shmais after General Manvel, then there's this Vacho or whoever. These nicknames, they're not just incidental, it's a symbolic chain. These are the points of application, these are the anchors to which this oligarchy was. So it's not incidental, they're hitting exactly those points. Just a month ago, we remembered the arrogant statements by the Republican Party MPs. They were saying, we're in the majority in the parliament, we will yet display our power, it's us, everything will get back business as usual. People, they were still not cognizant of what had transpired. Very soon they realized that. This General by handing over General Manvel, they let go of their entire order. They had no alternative. They had to hand over this general. This is allowed in oligarchy. The oligarchy can betray itself. And it will go on like this. Yesterday we were talking in various communications. Where will this second forceful stage of the dismantling take us to? After all, this is repression. After all, steps are being taken which the people welcomed, but it would be difficult to judge whether it's lawful or not. The temporary provisional prime minister nominated by the people has made a statement. The meaning, the rationale of this operation is to establish rule of law in the country. That's what he stated. No one is going to be above or beyond law. At least one point was made clear. He said, starting with my own household, no one is going to be above law. Well, let's say this is a pretty abstract but straightforward concept. We see that this masked, hooded SWAT teams enter the houses of these oligarchs. I don't know the extent to which this is lawful, but the people embrace and welcome this because there's no question these people are criminals. The people doesn't need a courtroom to know. They 100% know this person is a criminal. The court is secondary in such a case. It's very biased, subjective. No one, not a single person contests or doubts. Well, there was just one person who publicly came up. It was the defense counsel of Manvel Sargsyan. He told him, if you were mistaken, you have to apologize. There was just one person in the entire nation who contested, which is why it's not clear where this process is headed. These repressions may gain momentum, they may become the norm, the new norm, and they will be unlawful, of course. This will create a major problem. But let me tell you that in this situation there is a much bigger positive component to it. Why? Because those who launched these operations, the People's Operation, they were thinking about the second, they were planning even the third stage. And yesterday, this program was published in a format of a civil initiative. So it was there from the very beginning. After the first stage, once the oligarchy is dismantled, let me tell you specifically, so it was those two stages of the first stage, the peaceful operation and then the forceful operation. What's next? The economic and political landscape has to be brought back to norm, which is what every theoretician says after every change. The ultimate objective, the uber objective, is to normalize the political and economic frameworks, which is why, because the assets that have been unlawfully accumulated, they resulted in usurping the power. The unlawful assets and property cannot be protected in any way and should not be protected other than by taking over the state leverage. It's not property, it's not private property per se, it becomes the property of the entire system. And if someone leaves the system, is deprived of the property very easily and seamlessly. The system just takes over and the people applaud again. Well done, get the eye out, take the other assets as well. We've seen this both in Armenia and elsewhere, which is why everyone is striving to get a part of the system of public governance to protect their assets. The state is crumbling. It's not possible to create a Rechtsstaat unless private property is protected. The private property can never be protected if the public does not recognize the lawfulness thereof. No mechanism can be summoned to protect it. Inevitably, there will be someone either in the authorities who, using the opportunity of the people not recognizing the right to property, will either take it over from everyone else, or alternatively a revolutionary team will come up, like Che Guevara style, who under the resounding applause of the people will still take away that property. And this process has no end. But how can one legalize such assets? That is the problem. They have, for 25 people, they've been pilfering to the bottom of the barrel. A small group has been taking over. There are villages where everyone has left because there was someone, they had 500 hectares of land. This guy came over, precludes the farmers from tilling their grandfather's land. Many villages, they've taken the last thread. I'm not mentioning immovables, industrial. Half of Yerevan is industrial plants idling for 25 years, but no one can set foot there because it's someone's property. Real estate, practically no one is paying the property tax. No real estate tax is ever levied or collected. This is the ultimate objective. This is why I think it was in this very building there was this famous Daron Acemoglu. He pinpointed that as Armenia's biggest issue. That's what he said. It is. Is it possible to introduce? Can you normalize economic political landscape? Then you get somewhere. Failing that, you stay where you are. I was interested for many years. How do people pull this through in other countries? Because every country faces the same issue. They found ways. And I can propose, and I will propose to this cabinet, and I've done this before, maybe there will be platforms and forums to set this form. There's one essential method. 3 laws have to be enacted at the point when the understanding arrives or matures for that. What are these 3 pieces of legislation? The first law should be on property, or call it decapitalization. The name doesn't matter. It could be a series of laws which would enshrine the following principle: economic amnesty. That is, you recognize the existing assets and property. There should be a compensation tax imposed, though. The owners are recognized, the public recognizes their property, but in order to have it fully legal over a certain deadline, between a year or 25 years, those owners have to be paying compensation tax to the public for the damage they had incurred to this country, to this society. There have been attempts like this elsewhere in the world, and they have proven to be very effective. Why is this method good, I believe? Because it addresses 2 issues. The first, a certain notion of justice underlies it. You can clearly see that it's some semblance of fairness and justice proposed to the public. This is fair. But there are other ways. You can simply disenfranchise them, like the Bolsheviks did. You just take everything away and then redistribute. That's another way of doing it. That's also like fairness or justice. Maybe there are other ways of doing it. But this format is following the model of fairness that eventually leads to solidarity. Why? Because this offset can be organized in a very smart way. We clearly know who suffered, for example, in downtown Yerevan, there were people who had their ancestral apartments or homes, thousands of people. They've lost it. They were just snatched away. The eminent domain. You call it eminent domain, that's it. So they gave them a couple of pennies, they kicked them out. These people reverted to litigation. The courts told them you were right. So this is a big stratum, very specific, delineated, that you could set up a fund to compensate their loss. Or let's take Gyumri. There's still 7,000 shanty shabby. They've kept these people in almost slavery for 30 years. Very specific stratum. You can set up a foundation to compensate these people. The poor, impoverished families. Their sons were taken, conscripted, drafted into the army. They fell by the thousand. The oligarchy is a caste. They only have rights. The rest only have duties and obligations. So there are tens and hundreds of thousands of people. Who's going to compensate them? So this approach that I propose may lead to solidarity. If this process were to take place year over year, if those assets are returned, true solidarity will prevail. People will no longer be hostile to those who robbed them. So the robbers and the robbed will engage in a process which will result in reconciliation. This much about the proposed method. This was brilliantly done in Ireland in 1978, Republic of Ireland. They gave this classical mechanism to the world. The situation was very similar to Armenia. That's one issue, assets, property. So if the assets are legalized through the method I referred to, the people recognize that the owners will attempt at any cost. They're no longer attracted to enter the state governance apparatus at any cost because there are no benefits to be had from that. The impact of capital on political processes and the system governments will be eroded or eliminated or made insignificant. This leads to another concurrent problem. How are the people going to elect the people to the government? Under our laws, it's only political parties that can run in elections. So if those political parties are entitled, who is going to be recognized as a political party? Because they get this powerful eligibility to go out there and run a country. This should cost dearly. It's not like now there is this Ani Zakarian. I don't know how did she get hold of a rubber stamp, a wet stamp of a party, and she does whatever she pleases. She's a political party. There are 70 such person/parties, hyphenated person parties. I don't know how they ended up there, and they were catering to this oligarchic system. It was common knowledge. They were offering dirty services to the system. That was their... So these people will be running in the next elections? By what right? So they have to be deprived of this right. This leads to the second fundamental law on political parties. A very stringent law, a law that would sieve out this mass so that no one in the current parliament would ever enjoy any chance to re-register. There should be a re-registration mechanism through this new law. This 79 will have to be eliminated. None of them should make it there. New parties will have to be put in place, which will work in conditions where no one would ever contest or cherish any single morsel of doubt that there are genuine political cards. I mean, the mechanisms could be thought out, but what matters is the idea. How do you arrive at those gangs and bands not disguising themselves as political parties? And the third law, naturally, would be the electoral code, which shall reflect or mirror these two laws. It's not just suspended in mid-air, an electoral code. No, it has to reflect, merge, bond these two laws. These are the preconditions for elections. I think we may succeed. If we succeed to do this, we will be able to build a proper nation state. Failing that, the same thing will persevere. More repression, another oligarchization. Thank you for your attention.